big welcome to Experience 2 of the series Living Purposefully into Your Very Own Story. We're in Series 1, Experiences 1 to 10, and each of these experiences is about some aspect of awareness. And today's aspect is of energies within me in my skin. So let us begin. Sit comfortably on your chair. Perhaps close your eyes. Let all the tense parts of your body reveal themselves. Consciously relax them one by one. I now invite you to do a body scan for tension, consciously relaxing any tension point as you become aware of it. Head, neck, shoulders, arms, torso, legs. And when the time is right for you, give a little time now to really experience your body in this more relaxed mode. And again, when the time is right for you, bring your awareness back to the room level energy. Perhaps it was so comfortable without tension that you wanted to stay there. But anyway, take one more moment to ask yourself, how was that for me? And receive any word, phrase, sense, or image that emerges. And perhaps you'd like to make a note of it. Observer self has just been operating. So here we have another metaphor, and I'm going to interpret this metaphor. And the first part of the interpretation that I'm giving it is that it's a metaphor for some energies within me in my skin. There are more than I'm naming. I'm naming ones that arise for me out of this image. So I'm allowing you a little time now to let this metaphor reveal something of itself to you. What energies within you are you reminded of? And what do you feel or sense about what you're reminded of or about this metaphor itself? Speak what arises to yourself, to others in your group, or write your sensings. So now I'm breaking up the different aspects of this metaphor according to my interpretation of the metaphor. For me, I'm calling the outside rim there the physical or sensory perception. There's a kind of a raised hand figure at the bottom of the image, and I'm naming that as an intention to face inwards and be present, which is an ability we all have and are capable of doing. Then there are swirls underneath the parts of the image which are in the foreground. I'm calling them aesthetic self. And how do we get aesthetic self? We can't put a handle on it. It's in sensory memory, and sensory memory arising, some of our sensory memory arising through swirls and risings. In the centre here is a kind of a more nebulous block. And I'm calling that our essence. That is our potential to become. And I call that becoming self as a way to name it. Around the top of the image, there is this looking down. For me, it looks benignly over the whole inner interactions. And I call that caring, nurturing aspect. And I've named it our true self. Our true self really does nurture us, and it happens automatically when you think about self-preservation reactions. When danger comes, all of our energies automatically, spontaneously arise. Caring, nurturing. One aspect I've just described of caring, nurturing. And there are many other aspects. And as we'll see in the story, the story about being stressed, we'll see that the nurturing is pointing out where there's conflict within our own, could be levels of desires or other parts of us and our inner landscape. And now, as well as all of these energies being within us, we harness them for how we relate with the world outside us. And I'm calling how we relate with the world outside us, me and my skin, as my public self. And as well as that set of reactions or level of operating out of the energies, there's another set which is inside us about how we feel about ourselves, how we regard ourselves, about inner patterns, what we like, what we don't like, preferences. And that's our private self. So we have layers as well as aspects. And we have even more. For everything that has been named here, there is a series of conscious aspects that we can name, and there's a series of unconscious aspects which we can name when we're invited to by this caring, nurturing aspect of ourselves. There'll be more about all of these as we move through the different experiences. For ease of description, I am calling the energies that I've named in this metaphor selves. The physical self. This self reveals sensory awareness, that is, our skin and our tension, such as we've done in our quiet moment to begin, experiences 1 and 2. In the story about Days I Don't Go Out, there was a physical sensory sensing when I thought about it. When I brought myself back in sensory memory to the experience, I experienced my stomach muscles dropping. Oh no. And then at the end, at the clang of getting my day back again, I had a sense of light and warmth and pleasure and lightening of my energies at having my free day back. This self has the capacity to decide where our conscious awareness is to be directed. In the story about Days I Don't Go Out, I didn't like the loss, and I had joy at restoration of the loss. So that was in my consciousness. For my aesthetic self, this is the self through which near-conscious, subconscious, and unconscious swirls and arisings enter our consciousness. Aesthetic self means that this self brings so many meanings together in this story. Loss, need, Duty for story about days that don't go out. Continued the story to reveal an inner truth for story about stress. The becoming self. The self that is emerging as we live into our very own story of embracing more deeply our essence and potential. So back to the story. I was a more responsible coordinator of my business. That's where the growth point was in the stories about days I don't go out. In the story about stress, inside me in my private self, I came to a better balance of life, work and study. Caring, nurturing aspect, true self. Our deepest self is that part of us which coordinates care, nurture and truth. In the story about stress, my true self nurtured me, alerting me to too much stress and alerting me to the conflict between different levels of desire. Public self. Public self includes the strategies we adopt to interact with our outside world. Private self. The self characteristics that are for ourselves alone and are unique to us. Where they are in the stories. Public self in the story about the days I don't go out. I came to a responsible workplace decision. In my private self, in the story about stress. I took notice of the invitation to care for myself by reducing my stress levels. So, take some time now to name some of the selves that emerged in your stories of tingles and clangs. And here's a listing of the selves. Physically sensing self, your conscious awareness self, your aesthetic self, your becoming self, your true self, your public self, your private self. And perhaps allow your sensory memory or your nurturing self to allow you to be with one of these. You won't have time, one or two of them. You won't have time to do all of them in the space I'm leaving. However, you could make more space and be present to each one of them if you wished. An holistic summary of what we have named as energies within us is in this mantra. The mantra Holy Ground by Monica Brown.
You are here, so this is holy ground in all that is. You are here, this is holy spirit bows to you upon this holy ground. You are here, so this is holy ground. In all that is, you are here. This is holy ground, the ground of my being now. My spirit bows to you upon this holy ground. You are here, so this is holy ground. In all that is, you are here. This is holy ground, the ground of my being now. My spirit bows to you upon this holy ground. You are here, so this is holy ground. In all that is, you are here. This is holy ground, the ground of my being now. My spirit bows to you upon this holy ground. You are here, so this is holy ground. In all that is, you are here. This is holy ground, the ground of my being now. My spirit bows to you upon this holy ground. This holy
There is a strategy that you could use to increase your capacity for inner awareness around yourselves. Each evening or sometime during the day, spend some time, maybe 7 to 10 minutes, letting the selves in the stories around your tingles and clangs of the day reveal themselves. And the next morning, 1 to 2 minutes, soak in the fact that these selves in action are your holy ground. So how has Experience 2 expanded your awareness of selves in your inner landscape context? Experience 1 was of tingles and clangs. And we've added the other part of Siga Kurda's poster here. And in the lower part, we see 2 faces. And this is what happens when we look into the well of our sensory memory. We will see conscious and unconscious and different things that we can't realise if we just stay in our conscious awareness. So Experience 2 has named several selves that underpin realities within our well of experience. Would you like to expand and enrich your inner awareness yet more? Experience Experiences 3 to 10. I thank you for having been a part of Experience 2.